Good afternoon. This is Rob from First Session. First Session is a company that connects Canadians with the right mental health professional for them. We are back today after a little break with another Instagram Live with a special guest today. And before I get started and before I announce the guest, I would like to do an acknowledgement of the land we are on today, or land I am on. I'd like to acknowledge that the land we're meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississauga of the Credit. So welcome everyone today who's joining us. Thank you for joining us. Our guest today, her name is Samra Zafar, an incredible, strong woman, a leader who has a long story of resilience and overcoming some abuse, and is now in school to, I believe, get her third degree. I won't skip too far ahead as we will wait for her to join. But I would like to state that somewhat of a trigger warning for people if they are experiencing any violence, domestic violence. Will include some resources for them, as Samra may. Let's see, here is Samra. Hello.
Hello. How are you? Do you see me?
You. Yes.
Awesome. Wonderful. I was like, we're talking about mental health and self-care, so there's no better place for that conversation than being in nature.
Lovely. So far, so good with the sound and everything, so I'll let you know.
Awesome. I have my mic and I'm holding it close to me, so that's great.
Great. I know it's a little windy today. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to jump into a little quick intro here, and then I'll pass it back over to you.
Awesome.
And so our guest today, Samra Zafar, is an award-winning international keynote speaker, best-selling author, and social entrepreneur. After escaping a decade of abuse living as a child bride in Canada, she pursued her education as a single mother, working multiple jobs, and completed her bachelor's and master's degree in economics at the University of Toronto with the highest distinction. Samra is currently attending medical school at McMaster University to pursue her goal as a doctor in the field of mental health. Incredible. So welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm really, really excited to be here. And you can hear me okay, right?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Awesome. Perfect.
So, sounds great. I'll let you know if that changes.
Let me know.
Great. Well, yeah, thank you for your openness to chat today. So, First Session is a Canadian mental health company focused on helping people find the right support for them. I know you have a lot to share. I know you've shared it a lot. What have you learned about mental health through the many, years of struggle that you had, and now, as a mother? And feel free to share as much or as little about your story as you'd like it in that context.
Yeah, first of all, that's a great question and a broad question. So I'm going to try and break it down into some, bite-sized pieces. When you think about mental health and when you think about resilience, when you think about going through tough times and changes and adapting and all of those things, sometimes people tend to say this sentence, oh, you have what it takes, or you don't have what it takes, right? And we often judge ourselves, like, maybe I don't have what it takes to go through this tough time. And I get asked this question so much, like, Samra, what was it in you that enabled you to go through all that you did and be where you are and achieve what you've achieved, or even just have this happy outlook towards life, instead of being traumatized or broken by everything that happened. And my answer to that is, like, it's not that I have any kind of a secret ingredient that others don't have. So it's not like, mental health is not, or resilience is not some kind of like a something that you're born with, like a trait that you're born with. It's something that you develop. It's like, I always call it like strength training for your emotional muscle. So like, when you go to the gym and you lift weights and you're, strengthening your physical muscles, the way you strengthen your emotional muscle is by having moments, several moments in your life, and at every stage where you are feeling afraid, where you are feeling anxious about something, um, you are choosing to act from a place of courage. You are choosing to act from a place of resilience and bravery and having that faith that things will turn out okay. Not just faith in things will turn out okay, but faith in yourself, that you
Mhm.
have the ability to figure things out. So when I think about points in my life where I have gone through those tough times, so it hasn't been that I was fearless. In fact, I don't even like the word fearless, because it kind of gives the connotation and impression that fear is something that is bad, and fear is
Mhm.
something that you should have less of or none of, which is very unrealistic.
Mhm.
Fear is a very normal part of the human emotion spectrum. Fear is something that all of us feel, and fear is healthy. If we didn't have fear, we'd be going off doing reckless things like jumping off of planes without parachutes, right? So fear is what keeps us away from a lot of things that are harmful for us. But fear sometimes also kicks in when, especially when we don't know what lies ahead, when we don't know the outcome. And a lot of times in life, uh, there will be situations that will happen to you that are unknown, and that's when you feel afraid, and it's very normal and natural to feel that fear. So the key to courage is not that you don't feel fear. The key to courage is that, or the key to resilience is that in the times that you are afraid, you acknowledge it, you embrace that fear, you know that it's a normal part of your being as a human being. um, but then you still choose to act from a place of courage because you believe in something so deeply. And in my life, all those points where I've made those decisions, I've been terrified, I've been afraid, but I've also believed deeply that I have the right to my education. I've believed that I have the right to freedom. I have the right to be who I am. And that is what has made the difference. And that's how you strengthen your resilience muscle.
And did you look up to anyone in your younger years that gave you inspiration or gave you the ability to have some of that courage, or how did that develop?
In my younger years, no, I didn't really have any role models growing up. My father was abusive to my mom. My mother, I wish, was stronger and had that kind of self-belief in herself, but she really didn't. Um, I had a couple of teachers who were good to me and were always encouraging me, because I was academically always, I guess, ahead of the pack, or maybe like academically inclined, I would say. So for me, my education was really, really important. So my teachers recognized that, and then they would, help propel my confidence. Uh, so when I grew up, I was in a very confusing kind of environment where, on one hand, I was being told that, yeah, getting these good grades is amazing, but on the other hand, I was also being told that, oh, don't dream as far as this much, but don't expect those dreams to come true. So it was a very confusing upbringing. But today, I have a lot of people in my life who are amazing role models, and my own personal cheerleading squad, as I call it. And those are friends,
Yeah,
mentors,
so,
people that are my chosen family.
sounds like your daughters as well are there.
Oh yeah, absolutely, my
Um,
daughters. Yeah.
overall it sounds good. I think some of the wind is maybe getting into the microphone a
Oh,
little
it is?
bit.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
so I don't
maybe
know if
I.
it works to like face another way or like cup your
Yeah.
mic a little bit,
Okay.
but
Okay, I
we can
will.
hear you clearly, but yeah, it's some of the wind gusts.
Okay.
Um, okay. So I was curious, like what? So I've watched your TED talk, and read the Toronto Life, article. And when I feel like there must be a lot of people who look at you and look at what you experienced, and that maybe they're experiencing hardship themselves, but maybe they think that what they're experiencing isn't as severe as what you experienced. Um, what would you say to those types of people who want to downplay their own experiences?
I think I get asked this question quite a bit, and sometimes, people would say, well, I haven't really been through what you've been through, or my trauma wasn't as bad, or compared to you, like, what I went through is nothing. As if there's some kind of a competition or like a quantitative aspect to trauma, which it isn't. Trauma is trauma, and it's all relative. So not just about the incident that happened, but also the experience of how we feel it. And that is very subjective. So somebody might be more traumatized by something that to other people might seem quite, trivial or small. Whereas other people might be able to go through different things and come out less traumatized. So, and that doesn't make it good or bad or at anything. So and trauma is not something you move on from. When people say, oh, you move on from it, it's in the past, get over it kind of thing. You never get over trauma. You never get over adversity. It stays a part of you. It's not something you move on from. It's something you move on with. And then you can develop skills and boundaries and lessons and through education, through reading, through support systems, etc. You can develop those things to be able to live still a very fulfilling and happy life. But it's not something that just goes away. Like even to this day, like I've been out of my marriage for now almost 12 years. There are days that I have where sometimes I don't feel like getting out of bed. There are nightmares I have. There are difficult moments that I have. But I've developed a portfolio, I would say, of skills and a strong support system around me that even during those tough days, I can go through those tough days with grace and resilience and bounce back even stronger.
That's incredible. And another question I had was, it sounds like throughout your story and I mean, your story continues, but throughout the hardship period, you had a lot of people that said things to you that like hurt deeply. It sounds like it sounds like maybe people in your family or your community made you feel terrible. My question is more like, I know it's easy for us to judge others. It's easy for us to provide those kind of comments that don't help, but really like deflate others. Why do you think these people in your life were mean at the time? And do you think that they're mean people, or do you think there's something else there?
So when people are mean to us or they say hurtful things to us, it's because they are hurting inside themselves, that they are operating themselves from a place of fear and pain. Happy, content people don't go around hurting people. And something in them is often broken to the point that they feel that the only way they can feel good is by hurting someone else. The only way they can feel powerful is by discriminating or oppressing someone else. The only way they can feel, good about themselves is by making someone else feel bad. And that's because inside they lack that self-love, that core of substance, that they are enough. They feel inadequate. So when I think about my parents, growing up and living in a culture that is filled with misogyny and patriarchy, which is normalized. And I'm not talking about the culture as in the Pakistani culture as a whole. I'm talking about the culture, like the relative smaller culture of where I grew up in and where my family was and how they operated. I would see all these things all the time where abuse was normalized, racism and sexism was normalized. That's just the way they operated. And then when you go around judging people, you judge yourself too, right? And then you see yourself in comparison to other people. And as soon as we start operating from a place of comparison rather than empathy and humanity, we feel inadequate in comparison to other people. So the only way you feel good is other people feeling bad, right? So whether it was my parents and what they did by pushing me into that marriage, whether it was my ex-husband, who I believe was hurting so deeply because he felt so inadequate about himself, and he was dealing with a lot of unhealed trauma, which he was not even conscious enough to recognize and heal from. And the only way he felt good about himself was by oppressing and insulting and humiliating me. And then after that, people that, for example, when I've started sharing my story, I have received an immense amount of backlash from people who think I'm defaming the culture or religion for my self-promotion, or people who feel threatened by my messages. And the way I deal with that is recognizing that it's not personal. It's not an attack towards me because they don't even know me. It's an attack towards what I stand for and what I advocate for, because what I'm saying is so threatening to their reality that instead of looking within and realizing there might be something they need to work on, it's much easier to point fingers towards me. For example, like women who like a lot of the backlash I receive, sorry, the wind is a bit too much right now, but hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah.
A lot of the backlash that I receive is from women who reach out to me and say, that I'm on the wrong path, or I'm doing something that's sinful or shameful, etc., etc. But and initially it used to hurt me, especially when I had first started sharing my story in the beginning days. I was like, well, here I am talking for women and for women equality and empowerment, and women are the ones who are like, hating on me, like what's going on, right? But then I realized that imagine a woman who has lived her entire life based on this framework that she is unequal, unworthy. She is unable to make decisions, incapable of living alone or leading a life of empowerment, because she is not equal in any way. Not equal in intelligence, not equal in capability, not equal in respect, etc., etc. If she has believed it in her core, and that is why she has now tolerated a lot of abuse, a lot of disrespect, a lot of subjugation, a lot of humiliation all her life, right? And suddenly she sees someone like me talking about that, saying the exact opposite, that no, you are equal, you are enough, you are capable, and not just talking about it, but living like that. I live a life that is very independent and very much, I believe I'm very much capable, if not more than a lot of people out there, right? So if I'm saying all of that and living that, then for that woman who's basically lived her entire life based on that assumption and tolerated maybe a lot of different types of oppression, imagine for her looking at me and thinking, oh my God, have I lived my entire life based on a lie? How painful of a pill that is to swallow. How painful of a moment that would be to look within and think, especially if you're in the later stages of your life, that I've wasted my entire life based on a lie. And now I can't even go back and change it. And maybe even feeling like it's too late to change, right? So for that woman, it's so much easier to point fingers at me rather than look within and realize that she's lived her entire life based on a lie. So it's not an attack on me. It's because listening to me is not just threatening, but painful. And when people try to run away from their internal pain, they often cause pain to other people.
Mm-hmm. That is very powerful. Thank you. And it's so admirable hearing the compassion that you lead with. Must be very difficult. So that's incredible. What is keeping you motivated?
Well, the antidote to oppression is compassion, and the antidote to hate is empathy. So I always operate from that. Try to operate from that.
That's incredible. What's keeping you motivated today? What is your hope for the world?
My hope for the world is that empathy and love become louder than hate and any kind of oppression, because we are living in a world, especially with social media, where oftentimes, we see people would say things to each other behind a screen that they would never say in person. People would start hating on each other, and now we're forming echo chambers through social media of people who validate each other's really honestly like inhumane and intolerant beliefs, right? We see beliefs that probably were still there before the internet came along, but those beliefs were more hidden, right? They weren't like out there for the entire world to see. Whereas now, whatever beliefs I have, right, however disgusting or atrocious those beliefs might be, I can go to some dark corner of the internet and find my clan and find my echo chamber and people who will validate me. And I can then give myself a pat on the back and say, wow, I was really onto something, because there are other people who believe this way, who think this way too, right? And then people who do operate from a place of love, compassion, and empathy don't want to engage with that, right? So we kind of just stay quiet, or we sort of start thinking, oh yeah, you know what, let's not add fuel to the fire, or what can we do? And then what that creates is a culture and a wave of just hate being louder, oppression being louder. And silence is the biggest ally of any kind of oppression. Silence never helps the oppressed. It always helps the oppressor, because that is why oppression continues, because oppressors know that the victims will not speak up. Like, that's why I started sharing my story, because I knew that my story is not just my story. It is such a common story. It is such a widespread story. It happens to people from all walks of life, all genders, all socioeconomic and races and all of that. But my outcome is unique. My outcome is rare. A lot of people are still trapped in those circumstances and stay trapped forever. Like, even if you just think of the issue of child marriage, there are 12 million girls every year who are pushed into child marriage around the world. Every year. There are 700 million women alive today who were child brides. I'm one of 700 million. Wow. There are 1 in 2 women, more than half of us, who are facing some kind of sexual or physical oppression or harassment at some point in our lives. 1 in 3 of us face intimate partner violence at some point in our lives. That's the world we're living in. But we don't talk about those things because they're too taboo. They're too, unpleasant. They're not dinner table conversations. And then what happens? We bury our heads in the sand and the oppression continues, right? So the only way we're going to make any kind of change, the first step to it is to break the silence and to bring these things out from under the rug and be able to not just talk about it, but take action against it, not just on a government level. Like, we can't just think, oh, this is a government issue, the laws have to be passed, but on conversational level, on individual level, on like having conversations with friends, with family. Like, change always starts at the grassroots level. Social change starts at the grassroots level. And that has to happen by breaking the silence and by making sure that love and empathy is louder than hate and oppression.
And you mentioned trauma, maybe at least once there. Is what you're educating, you're back in school now, does it have to do with
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I mean, the reason I applied to medical school, and I was so afraid, and this is again one of the, I was talking in the beginning about courage and fear. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is, yes, I'm afraid, I'm terrified of this, but I'm still going to do it because it means something to me. And that's exactly how I operated when I applied to medical school. Like, given that I'm in my 30s, in my late 30s, I'm a non-traditional student without a science background. I was terrified about med school. I was like, what am I thinking? I already have a stable career in banking, and I have kids who are going into university, and I don't know if I'm even going to get in. But like, I always believe, like, if you don't take a shot at it, you'll never know, right? So I applied and I got in, and I'd been thinking about it for a while, in fact, but I would talk myself out of it that no, it's not going to happen, blah, blah, blah. But like, it was just mainly because I was afraid and I was in my own way. And when I got out of my own way, it happened and happened in a fabulous way. My first trial at the application I was in, and my goal is eventually to hopefully become a psychiatrist, specializing in the field of trauma and helping people heal from trauma and adversity. And you know, I'm living proof that there's a lot of life after trauma. There's a lot of love after trauma. There's a lot of amazing joy and optimism after trauma. And my mission in life is to help as many people as I can realize that for themselves.
That is amazing and so incredible that you're on this path still. And it sounds like you're going to have continued huge impact. So thank you. Thank you for, from all of us. Thank you.
Thank
I think
you.
you're an incredible leader. So thank you so much. Is there anything else? Are you on campus right now, or are you between classes?
No, yes, actually, I am. And I decided to just step out. I didn't realize it would be this windy, so hopefully we can do it again, and I can do it in from home, and that way, it will be less windy. And I'm always happy to have these conversations. And I will say to all the people who are watching and listening right now, please feel free to write to me. Please feel free to DM me. I might not be able to respond right away, but I do promise I will respond. Just know that you are enough. You absolutely have what it takes. So whatever it is that it takes, you have it in you. The courage we seek is within us. We just need to learn how to use it. And
Incredible.
We can all learn that. Never too late.
Thank you. I think that's an excellent place to end it. So have a great rest of your day, and
Thank
we'll
you.
definitely be in touch. So thanks again.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.